Glad we're able to talk today. A couple of items. I'm glad to just open it up. First, I continue to press my colleagues to stop this president's illegal war in Iran. And some good news, the House just passed another war power resolution directing the president to either withdraw troops from the war or seek a congressional authorization. Thus far, the president has refused to do either. We passed a binding House resolution that actually came to the Senate. The Senate voted on it as well, declaring that this war is illegal without a congressional authorization, and the president is breaking the law. In fact, the president is really triply breaking the law. One, he began this war on his own initiative without seeking the congressional authorization that the Constitution requires. Two, the War Powers Resolution arguably might allow a president to conduct some military operations for 60 days, but the statute makes plain that at the end of the 60 days, the president must stop the military operation if Congress hasn't approved it. We're well past the 60-day deadline, so the president is not only violating the Constitution, he's also violating War Powers Resolution. And third, once Congress passed the House concurrent resolution, both houses under Republican majority saying that the war is unlawful and directing the president to remove troops from hostilities or seek an authorization, he has chosen to do neither. So he's violating both the Constitution, actually not both, he's violating the Constitution and the statute and the recently passed bipartisan War Powers Resolution that House concurrent resolution that Congress passed. All right, so what does that all mean? Well, the president can break the law and the president can ignore the law, but the president can't change the law. And so we need to continue to force votes, but also now if the president is intent on ignoring or breaking the law, we have to use the appropriations process that is congressional pursuant to the Constitution to thwart this president's ability to keep funding an illegal war. The war is not only illegal, it's unnecessary. We had the Straits of Hormuz open, and we had a diplomatic deal with Iran about its nuclear program. The president tore up the diplomatic deal in his first term, and we warned him you would be leading us to an unnecessary war if you did so. He didn't listen. And then the president decided to launch this war on February 28th with no congressional notification or approval, no support from allies, no clear plan, no clear rationale. And he's done it in a way that is causing the deaths of U.S. troops, 18 to date, hundreds of U.S. troops injured, untold amount of damage to U.S. military infrastructure in the region, spending of probably in excess of $50 billion already out of the taxpayers' pocket for this unnecessary war, and punishing increases in gas prices and other prices of everyday goods like groceries and fertilizer that Americans and small businesses rely on. And so we've got to use the appropriations process in the weeks to come to do what Congress has never done in the history of the United States, but we need to do. We need to exercise our Article I power to stop an unwise and illegal war. And I'm focused on doing everything I can to make sure that happens. The most important thing anybody in this body can do to support troops is to block them from being used in illegal and foolish endeavors, to ask our troops to put their lives on the line for folly. Yet another war in the Middle East, which nobody that I speak to thinks is a good idea, is the height of public immorality. We shouldn't be asking our troops to risk their lives for illegal and foolish misadventures decided upon by this or any president. Second, some good news. The administration announced this week that it was awarding $16 million to the Advanced Pharmaceutical Research Hub in Richmond and Petersburg, and that comes on top of earlier investments that I think total nearly $60 million at the federal level into this particular exciting project that is taking the Richmond Petersburg area that's long had a pharmaceutical expertise, but really revitalizing it to try to make Richmond and Petersburg really the center of the production of high quality, high volume, native made, affordable pharmaceuticals. The effort really got a jump start during COVID. I give President Trump during term one some credit for this. There was a need to produce vaccines and other treatments for COVID at a rapid scale. And there was a realization that there were manufacturing facilities in Petersburg that had been closed that could be brought back to life, working together with VCU, with people at the Biotech Research Park in Richmond that I helped form when I was on city council many, many years ago. Richmond and Petersburg has really reclaimed leadership in this area, and it's continued to build with these federal investments. So I thank the administration, in particular, Secretary Lutnick, who gave me a call to announce that this was being done. We worked on it together with Senator Warner and Congresswoman McClellan and local leaders, and we're really excited about it. Third, in the Health Committee, showing that even when things can be challenging, we're still passing a lot of legislation. We passed out a bunch of bipartisan bills yesterday that are on the floor of the Senate and that we're going to look for action on, including one that would cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month. We've already done that under Medicare, but we have not done it similarly for the cost of insulin under private insurance plans. Some pharmaceutical manufacturers, to their credit, they looked at what we did with Medicare and they themselves have said, fine, we'll do the same thing with insulin, even if it's under private employer provided healthcare plans, but not all have done that. And insulin is life and death for people who are dealing with diabetes. And so we passed that out of committee yesterday. We passed a number of other bills. I had a bill with Susan Collins dealing with expanding our direct care workforce, especially the workforce dealing with geriatric patients. We got that passed. Some other really important bills. And so I'm really happy to report on that. Finally, I introduced a bill this week in the healthcare space with colleagues like Kevin Kramer, Andy Kim, and Steve Daines to give the CDC more tools, more power, and more responsibility to do research and share best practices about chronic pain management. Folks all over this country deal with chronic pain derived from a number of different sources, but the state of research and sharing of best practices isn't all that it can be. And so we've introduced the bill. I know what the bills do. I always forget their titles. Advancing Research for Chronic Pain Act. And we introduced that this week so that we can really get better information and direct the CDC to do more in the chronic pain space. And I'm glad to join with these bipartisan colleagues and a huge group of healthcare stakeholders who've worked with us on the bill to make sure it can do what really needs to be done. With that, I'm glad to open it up and take your questions.
Our first question is from Mitchell from WTOP.
Hey, Mitchell.
Hi, Senator. Thanks a lot for joining us, as always. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said the cost of the war this week is just over $37 billion. You've indicated you think that's a low figure. Do you think the Defense Secretary is being transparent about the cost of the war, as well as the toll it's taking on troops and the munition supply of the U.S.?
Well, I don't think the $37 billion number is accurate because the administration is saying we need $67 billion to replenish the stockpiles that have been drawn down by the war. So how does the 37 match with the 67 billion? And there is an additional cost component that I think all acknowledge, which is the damage to U.S. infrastructure in the region. Secretary Hegseth, I think, acknowledged, as has the comptroller nominee when he was before our committee last week, that the cost estimates they're giving us on the war do not include repairing the damaged infrastructure in the region. Now, the reason they're using for that is, I mean, A, they haven't calculated the total damage cost, but B, they also haven't calculated what exactly it is that they will rebuild. So you can imagine if there's damaged infrastructure and they decide, well, we don't need troops there anyway, well, then maybe they don't pay to rebuild it. They haven't figured that out yet. But if you just look at the request for the additional $67 billion and the fact that the infrastructure damage cost hasn't yet been calculated, I think we're well in excess of $50 billion in war cost. And my colleague, Senator Wicker, who's the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, he has said publicly that he thinks the cost is more likely near $100 billion now. So although some of the costs have not been calculated, I feel very, very comfortable saying that current costs are well in excess of $50 billion.
Next is Michael from WHSE.
Hey, Michael.
Hi, Senator Kane. Thanks for taking the time to do this. My question for you is, with the House's recent passage of the Stop Insider Trading Act, I wanted to get your reactions to that bill and what you think is going to happen when that comes to the Senate floor for.
Yeah, I am a strong supporter of that bill. I have long supported a ban on stock trading by senators and House members. I think it should also apply to the executive, but whether or not it does, there ought to be a ban on stock trading by members of Congress. One of the challenges has been there have been competing proposals, each have their own merits and demerits. I'll vote for whatever one that gets put before us. So now the question is, with the House having passed it, what we can do to facilitate it moving here. There are pending Senate bills, and I think one of the issues is, do we take up one of the Senate bills, or do we just take up the House bill and get it to the president's desk? I like taking up House bills and getting them to the president's desk rather than, even if they've done something that I approve of, which I do. I kind of like doing that because it makes it quicker than trying to pass a Senate version, and maybe it's slightly different than the House version, and then you get into a negotiation. So I'll be encouraging my colleagues to take up the House bill and pass it.
Next is Allison from WSET.
Hey,
Hi,
Allison.
Senator. Thank you so much for taking time to speak with us today.
Yes.
So a recent audit by the Office of Inspector General revealed some serious issues with continued delayed USPS mail and other things, specifically here in Lynchburg. And I know you, along with Senator Warner, had advocated for improvements in the past, but things are just not seeming to improve. And so my question for you is, are you going to look into the results of this audit, and what will you be doing to push for solutions to these continued issues?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is one where I wish the post office was directly under the control of Congress as other federal agencies. Instead, the post office reports to a postal board. And so we do not have the ability to manage through congressional oversight in the completely direct way that we do with other agencies. However, Senator Warner and I and our congressional delegation with the previous postmaster, Louis DeJoy, we met with him regularly to raise issues about postal service in Virginia and how it needs to be improved. And we saw some progress. The progress was not only as reported by the Postal Service, the progress also, I can gauge progress based upon how many constituent complaints I get. Having been at this job for 13 and a half years, I can look at monthly constituent complaints and see which agencies' complaints are on the uptick and which agencies' complaints are on the downward path. The level of complaints about the post office is not as high as it was a couple of years ago. So we are seeing reductions in the complaint level. But one of the issues that's a problem is even if the complaint level statewide is going down, sometimes you'll find it going up. And a particular reason, Lynchburg has had that experience. The Roanoke area's had that experience. Richmond's had that experience. And so we look at that complaint level and we look at the audits, and then we tend to write letters to the postmaster demanding answers about what they're going to do to improve it. And Senator Warner and I will follow that same plan in the aftermath of the audit.
Next is Mitch from WDPJ.
Good
Hey,
morning,
Mitch.
Senator, and thank you for taking the time to take this question.
Yeah.
There appear to be a cluster of EBT skimming thefts in the city of Danville. We're looking at dozens of families, hundreds of people, no SNAP benefits for this month. And we've spoken to the Virginia Department of Social Services that says, well, we need additional federal funding in order to cover those stolen benefits. And it appears that the authorization to do that from the federal level expired in Biden's administration, has not been renewed under this Trump administration. And so I wanted to ask why it was allowed to expire. Why can't the federal government replace these SNAP benefits? Why was it not renewed under President Trump? And then finally, you have been a councilman, a mayor, a lieutenant governor, a governor, and now you're a senator. You have probably dealt with every single level of government that would be relevant here. Is there anything to do for these folks this month as they struggle to put food on the table? Because right now, even our food banks are saying they're seeing increased demand and they might in the future not be able to handle it.
One, anybody who has EBT benefits stolen should contact law enforcement immediately. Second, if anybody wants to reach out to our office, we do constituent service work, and sometimes these are hard issues for us to solve, but it's important for us to know about them because then it helps us advocate with colleagues. And so folks can go onto our website, kane.senate.gov. Folks can call regional offices, and I would encourage anybody to do it. But I'll tell you why this issue is a problem. There, under the previous, the SNAP benefit program fits within the Farm Bill. And under the previous version of the Farm Bill, there was a way to do compensation to those who'd had benefits stolen. We were working on a Farm Bill in 2024 at the time of President Trump's election. President Biden was in office. During Biden's presidency, the last couple of years of the Biden presidency, there was one Democratic House and one Republican House. We thought we had a farm bill negotiated that would have continued the ability to compensate those who had lost EBT benefits to theft. Once the president won and both houses flipped to Republican, the Republican majorities in both houses decided they didn't want to do the farm bill at the end of 2024. They wanted to wait until they had both houses and let's just do the farm bill in 2025. But but the two Republican houses have been unable to reach an accord on the farm bill. So we had a deal that was within our grasp, and it was a deal between one Democratic House and one Republican House. And when the November elections told everybody come January, there'll be two Republican houses, they decided to punt it into 2025. And thus far, the two Republican houses have not been able to get a farm bill done that would address this issue. I'm not on the Agriculture Committee, but I do talk to the leaders of that committee, Senator Bozeman and Senator Klobuchar, and have been urging we need to get this farm bill done so that we can provide this kind of benefit. The other additional problem that people in Danville and all over the state are experiencing is the reconciliation bill passed by Republican-only votes last year made massive cuts to SNAP benefits. So if you're going to cut people off SNAP or reduce their benefits and also not provide them a protection if their benefits are stolen, you leave people high and dry. And so we need to get the farm bill done. And if we can get the farm bill done, we can include the provision that we had up until the end of 2024 that will provide some backup for people who have their benefits stolen.
Next is Chris from WAVY.
Hey,
Hi,
Chris.
Senator. Thanks for taking time today. We had the report released this week from the AARO, the All Anomaly Reporting Office, about aerial phenomena reported off the coast of Virginia by the Pentagon and by the Navy. What do you make of this report? And can you give any further detail? Because I read the report this morning in its entirety, and it doesn't really give any detail as to where, when, and any, supporting data.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, I'm very aware of this and have followed it for years. I guess my level of focus is really kind of the functional one, like how can we protect ourselves? As you know, we had this really serious incursion into Langley airspace from drones back in December. This would now be probably December of 2023. And we still don't have good answers about where they came from, whose drones they were. And this was night after night after night. That did lead the Armed Services Committee to really pressure the Pentagon to develop a better strategy for dealing with unmanned system incursions, both aerial and on land or marine or submarine incursions. And frankly, we were not happy with the pace and the organization that the Pentagon was putting in place to deal with this problem. But I will say this, I'll give Secretary Hegseth some credit. After a kind of a slow start where there were too many stakeholders around the 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 Pentagon recalibrated this mission to protect us against unmanned systems into something that they call the JIATA 401. Now, I can't give you what the acronym means. I just call it JIATA 401, but it is an interagency task force to deal with threats of this kind. And I have been very impressed with the work of the Pentagon in the last year in really getting after this issue. We're doing better on the protection against aerial unmanned systems than we are systems that could be deployed by land or water. So we need to get better there. But I can't give you too much more details on the anomalies reported off the coast of Virginia. You know, I've read and seen videos as you have. We don't have a conclusion yet about their source, but we do have, I think, a solid effort in place to protect American citizens and particularly critical infrastructure from any attacks.
Thanks, Senator.
You bet.
Next is Juliana from Telemundo.
Buenos días, senador, muchas
Buenos
gracias.
días. De nada.
Senador, el tema de la guerra. Obviamente que se han hecho muchos esfuerzos, pero en realidad nada ha detenido al presidente de llevar a cabo ese conflicto. ¿Usted cree que a medida de que nos acercamos a las elecciones de medio término, los republicanos vayan a sentir más la presión, sobre todo porque la gente aquí en el país está sintiendo el costo económico, lo está sintiendo directamente en sus bolsillos?
Cada semana hay más colegas republicanos aquí en el Senado que tienen miedo sobre esta guerra y porque ellos están escuchando a sus votantes y la gente está diciendo que la guerra está muy malo contra la ley y también los costos son tan altos por familias y por empresas. Y mira, en el Senado al primero de la guerra, solo hay un republicano que puede votar con demócratas contra la guerra. Ahorita tenemos 4 republicanos que están votando con nosotros en el Senado y hay otro grupo de republicanos en la Casa de Representantes que están votando. Entonces, cada semana el número de republicanos que están votando contra la guerra está creciendo. Entonces necesitamos tener votos cada semana y también necesitamos usar el proceso de appropriations para el presupuesto. Necesitamos usar nuestro poder en el presupuesto a terminar o cortar fondos para la guerra.
Gracias, senador.
Last up, we have Kurt from WTKR.
Hey, Kurt.
Hey, Senator, how's it going? Thanks for taking our calls.
Yeah.
So as you know, the 2027 National Defense Authorization Act has a ton of money benefiting the military community in Hampton Roads.
Absolutely.
Can you help our viewers understand what it will take, what changes need to be made, but what will it take for Senate Democrats to support it so that it can move forward?
Yeah, we will get a defense bill done as we have every year during the time I've been here and really for the last 65 years. But what we need is there's a kind of a technical issue about we need an agreement about what the non-defense spending is going to be, Kurt, because the president proposes to increase the defense budget by at least 40% in 1 year. But thus far, we don't know, is that 40% coming out of SNAP? Is it coming out of Medicaid? Where's it coming from? And the way you answer that question is you reach an agreement not only on the defense, what we call the top line, what is the total defense number, but you also reach an agreement on the non-defense number. Thus far, the president and Republicans have told us what they want on the defense side, but we don't yet have an agreement on the non-defense side. That's important. But for me, the issue that's so important as a member of the Armed Services Committee, as a military dad, as somebody who knows how important our military is to Virginia, is guardrails to make sure that we are not sending our troops into harm's way in foolish and illegal wars. We're engaged in military action, striking boats in the Caribbean and Pacific right now that I view as illegal. We're engaged in a war in Iran that has killed 18 troops and injured hundreds of others that I view as illegal. because it's not been authorized by Congress. It's being carried out in contravention of the War Powers Resolution, and it's being carried out over the objections of Congress as expressed in a House concurrent resolution that was recently passed by both bodies. I think what I need to do most dramatically for our military is make sure that they're not used and put in harm's way in illegal and foolish wars. So the main thing I'm looking for in order to move forward is guardrails against use of funds in an illegal and foolish war. That's what I want, and that's what I'm pushing for.
Thank you, Senator.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, guys.